Hey there, we have like eons of stories to tell, so if you want to follow us along on this journey and keep up with all the stories that we have putting out, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Hope you enjoy. Thank you. Hey, what is up, everybody? Chad is here, and today we're going to be starting the story Triumph and Torment. So this story right here is crazy good, right? It's basically Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom working together to like free the soul of Doctor Doom's mom. We'll tell you like how like her soul was taken like during the story, but that's basically like like what's going on, right? So when we first pick up, right, we got this sorcerer, right, like this old sorcerer monk. They call him the aged Genghis, right? And he has like this servant, and the servant is talking about like you need to eat and stuff like that, and the sorcerer's just like no, I have to do this, I can't eat it, stuff like that. And the servant, he's just talking about like how all like both of them are gonna be doomed, like basically saying stuff like that. And the aged Genghis, he's like reminded of this thing, right? He's like Doom. No, like Doom is a man, and he like starts telling him this story, right, about this traveler that he met this one time, right? So basically, this traveler like approached him, right? And basically what this traveler was doing was like looking for power, right? He wanted the aged Genghis to, like teach him the ways of sorcery, teach him like magic and stuff like that, right? And when the sorcerer says no, this guy, he starts getting frustrated. He's like, okay, you gotta do this, right? I'm not some, normal guy, and I'm above all that, right? Show me how to do this stuff, right? He starts getting real aggressive to the point where he like actually pushes the aged Genghis down, like literally pushes him to the ground, right? And the aged Genghis, he's just like, okay, there's a temple in Tibet, right? Go to that temple. They will teach you stuff, and you can have all the power that you want, right? So he ends up like the traveler ends up like leaving and going to this temple, right? And like hours after he leaves, right, like the aged king he's just still on the ground, right? He's the traveler, he's just going through all this harsh environment trying to get to this temple. The aged king he's like still on the ground, right? And like hours later, the next morning, Doctor Strange shows up, right? And he's like, he's trying to, he finds his aged Genghis, right? And he's like trying to help him up, right? Because he's been pushed down, stuff like that. Doctor Strange, he like gets him up, he stays with him for a little bit while this traveler is just like on his way this entire time. He stays with them, and like he's basically like trying to make sure he's okay, right? So the traveler, he ends up like making it to this temple, right? And these people that are there, like the monks that are there, they take him in, right? They start teaching them. This traveler, he ends up like becoming the master of these guys, right? And they end up like forming this like suit of armor for him, right? So he like gets this suit of armor. They make him this little like mask, this helmet, stuff like that. And here comes Doctor Doom with like this great little like monologue that he says for himself, right? He's like, from this moment on, there is no Victor Von Doom. He is vanquished along with the handsome face he once possessed. In his place now stands Doctor Doom. And that is the origin of Doctor Doom, right? So from there, with that story being over, right, the servant starts talking to the Genghis again, right? And like the Genghis, he starts talking like, like in like different cryptic languages and stuff like that. He's not being like upfront with what's going on, right? And he starts talking about how the stars are aligned, right? And eventually it comes to the point where he like starts walking away, right? And, he just like goes and he starts calling all these different sorcerers, right? Literally calls all the sorcerers from the on the planet, from the Yucatan, Great Britain, Atlantis, Latveria, all these different places, right? He's like calling all these different sorcerers to the temple of the three, right? So the three, that's basically the Vishanti, right? Like the most powerful sorcerers in the universe. That's basically like what the temple of the three is, right? So he's calling all these different sorcerers, right? And he shows up to Doctor Strange, and Doctor Strange, he gets up, he's like, answering the call. It interested him, right? So he ends up getting up, and he's like traveling there. He doesn't want to just like teleport there, using his powers and stuff like that. He doesn't know like much of what's going on, so he decides to actually like take cabs, planes, hike, like stuff like that, just to take like a traditional way there, like without using magic. And he ends up like coming across the temple of the three, right? And he goes in, he sees all these other sorcerers, right? And they're all just like sitting there, just waiting, right? And like right after he comes in, Doctor Doom shows up, right? So Doctor Doom, when he shows up, right, like he comes up to the aged Genghis. He starts talking to the Genghis, and he's talking about how he learned like humility and humbleness, stuff like that. Ever since he became a king, he has to look upon all these different people. He can't, he has to actually, he has responsibility over these people, right? And he taught him all these different stuff, right? And eventually, he starts talking to him, and the aged Genghis, right, he starts talking. He's basically telling them that they're gonna compete against each other, right? They're all gonna participate in this little game, right? That when they start asking questions, we find out it's actually a game to decide the next Sorcerer Supreme, right? When that happens, Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom, they're liking that, and there's like, okay, no, there's something more to this, right? And like there's this glow behind the aged Genghis, and the Vishanti show up, like all three of them, right? They're big, they're floating heads and stuff. They just show up, right? And they're just like talking to them, and they're basically like telling them everything that they just said, right? Saying anybody that doesn't want to participate, don't have to. You know, it's not required, right? You know, it's not mandatory for them to try it, right? They just grab the most powerful sorcerers on the planet, right? That was basically it, right? So from there, one of these guys, right, Khalid Ishala. So he basically was like, you know, he pointed out Dr. Doom, right? Basically saying that Doom isn't a traditional, you know, sorcerer, right? Because basically what Doom does is he uses magic, but he also uses that magic in tandem with, like, you know, technology, right? Because Dr. Doom, he isn't just, you know, smart in magic, right? If you were to put Doctor Strange's intelligence in the form of mystic art and Reed Richards' intelligence in technology, you would basically get the intelligence of Dr. Doom. Like he's that is where his intelligence lies, right? It's in magic and technology, right? So he uses like all that stuff together for his spells and stuff like that, right? So when one of these guys calls him out, he puts down his gauntlets, right? Because, you know, he doesn't want to you know, use his technology in tandem against these guys when they're only limited to, you know, their mystic arts, right? He's a fair guy, you know, he's an honorable guy, so he takes them off, right? He's not going to use none of his technology, right? So with that happening, right, the game start. As soon as the game start, the Age Genghis, he, like, you know, he calls onto the Vishanti, right? You know, they basically like take him in and they put him in like this little crystal, right? And they're basically like saying the first sorcerer to get him out of the crystal will be the new Sorcerer Supreme, right? So one thing that happens as soon as it starts, right, one of these guys, Jules, he goes and blasts this thing, right? As soon as it does, all that energy that he splashed at it gets sent right back to him, and it basically entrances him, right? So with that happening, the rest of the sorcerers start attacking, right? Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom aren't attacking it, but, you know, all the other ones, they are. And as soon as they do, all of the energy gets blasted back to him, right? And Doctor Strange and Doom, and they're basically like, you know, the only ones who are actually stopping the attacks from this crystal, right? Basically entrancing all these people, right? Because every time it hits one of them, they become like, you know, in a zombified state, right? You know, they're just like out there just attacking them any kind of way. You know, they're not, you know, limited to the confines of the tournament anymore, right? You know, they're just attacking all of the sorcerers who are supposed to be participating, right? You know, stuff like that. So with Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom being the only two left, Doctor Strange, he ends up like taking out most of the sorcerers, and Doctor Doom, you know, he's like taking out a couple of them, you know, here and there, you know, stuff like that. And eventually it comes to a point where Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom are the only two actually standing at that point, right? So Doctor Doom, he like turns on Doctor Strange, and he's like, you know, trying to take him out, right? Because, you know, he realized that only one of them can be the Sorcerer Supreme, right? So they start attacking each other, and Doctor Strange, he comes and he confines Doctor Doom within the bands of Sidorak, right? So with that happening, it gives Doctor Strange, you know, time to actually go and, you know, figure some stuff out, right? So he goes into his astral projection form, and he realizes it's not that hard at all. Literally all they have to do is like ask for the Age Genghis to, you know, come back out, right? That's basically how it is, right? So he goes up, he says, Age Genghis, I pray you, come forth. And, you know, he says, as you wish, so shall it be, let all be released. And they come out, right? So with that happening, Doctor Strange becomes the Sorcerer Supreme, right? And basically the Vishanti are telling them that, you know, like with all the power that you have, being, you know, like calm and, you know, of sound mind are basically just as important as that stuff, right? So with that happening, right, the Vishanti, they leave, right? And basically the Age Genghis, after all these other sorcerers and stuff leave, he's basically talking to Doctor Strange, and he's saying, okay, well, a wish must be granted, right? And when Doctor Strange says, no, I don't need a wish, the Age Genghis says, no, you misunderstand. A wish must be granted from you, from the person that survived the power of the crystal with you, aka Doctor Doom, right? So he gets defensive here, okay? Because Doctor Doom, he's, you know, he sees Doctor Doom as a nefarious guy, right? Like he sees Doctor Doom as someone who literally just wants to take over the planet. That is what he wants to do, but at the same time, Doctor Doom is a good man. Like when it comes down to it, Doctor Doom, he might be a villain, but only in the same way that someone like Magneto is a villain, right? Only in the sense that like he goes against the good guys, right? Like when it comes down to it, those two aren't bad guys. Like they're doing what is right, just in an extreme way, right? That's basically like how they are. So with that happening, you know, he like starts getting defensive. He's like, no, like if I grant a wish of him of his, he's probably gonna wish for something crazy, right? And Doctor Doom, he assures him, no, like I'm that is not a motive of mine, right? Like if I want something for my kingdom, I will get that, okay? I am the king of my kingdom. That is all it will be, okay? Your mysticism will not be needed there, right? So basically what I need you to do is help me release my mother's soul from this demon, right? That's basically all I need you to help do, right? So when he says, okay, I guess, you know, I could do that, like that don't seem bad. The Age Genghis, he ends up like leaving, right? And when that happens, the building crumbles, right? So with that happening, Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom, they both leave, right? They go and get in Doctor Doom's airship, and they both fly to Latveria, right? So one thing that Doctor Strange notices is the way that Doom's people greet him when he comes back, right? So Doom, when they land, you know, they get out, and basically they get in this car, right? And like all of Doom's people are cheering for him, right? And it's not just some, you know, staged, you know, like okay, when we come back, you know, like cheer for us, you know, stuff like that. They're actually like literally glad to see him. Like they are genuinely happy to see that Doctor Doom has returned, right? Showing that he's actually a good king, right? Like he's not just somebody who's up there just taking over stuff and, you know, just like not caring about how his people live. Like he actually cares about these people, right? And they basically, you know, like they enjoy that. Like their emotions when he returns actually, you know, show that. Like that's their genuine response, right? So with that happening, right, later that night, they're in Doom's castle, right? And basically Doctor Strange is just like asking him all these different questions, like, you know, like how did this happen, you know, like stuff like that. And Doom, he's not trying to answer these questions, right? He doesn't want to talk about what happened. He just wants to go and do it. Like he just wants to go and, you know, get her soul back and let that be the end of it, right? So eventually his servant, right, Boris, he takes Doctor Strange away. You know, he's trying to get him to his quarters, you know, and he starts talking to him about Doctor Doom's, you know, his life, right? So basically what happened was when Doctor Doom was a baby, his mother, Cynthia Von Doom, she was basically like trying to get power, right? Like just trying to get power so she can, you know, help out these people, because the Baron of the land that they lived in, he was a bad person. Like he was a horrible person, right? He didn't care about how his people lived. Like he struck fear in the hearts of those people. He didn't care about them. He was like literally the exact opposite of what Doctor Doom is, right? So when she's like, you know, trying to get all this different power, you know, she's using spells and stuff like that, this demon comes up to her, right? Mephisto shows up, right? And he basically like offers her this power, right? And he like starts like, you know, like talking to her, basically saying like, okay, you don't want to sell your soul for this power, but, you know, think of your son, you know, think of your people, you know, think of your family, you know, stuff like that. Like you should take this power, right? So she's like, okay, I'll take the power, right? And basically like, you know, like talking to her, manipulating her, right? Pretty much. So with that happening, right, she gets all this power, right? And she like, as soon as she does, she goes up to this tavern, right? And like when in this tavern, the Baron's guards, right, they're all up in there, right? And basically she tells them, he's like, tell your Baron not to mess with us anymore or I will destroy him, right? And she just like goes in there and starts laying waste to all these guys, right? But eventually her power just like starts going unchecked, right? Like she just like starts freaking out, killing all these different people, like not even trying to, killing kids, everybody in the town is basically going, like basically getting killed by her unchecked power, right? Because like he gave her power, but what he describes is he didn't give her control of that power, right? She basically just like starts like losing it, and like in her agony, in her anguish that she's feeling, one of the guardsmen who were supposed to been, you know, like dead, you know, he's like still up, he's barely like standing, you know, he's on his last life, basically walks up and stabs her, right? So she ends up like making a getaway, right? And like when she's making her getaway, her husband, you know, Werner Von Doom, he basically like finds her like almost dead, right? So eventually she dies and he like buries her under a bridge. So what he does is, you know, since the Baron is like looking for him, you know, looking for him and Dr. Victor, when the Baron is like looking for him and Victor, they basically like get out of there, right? They leave, and he has like this cursed chest that he's trying to like, you know, like get rid of, but every time he tries to destroy it, nothing happens. So it's like they're just like tearing this little cursed chest around, right? So eventually Boris shows up, the servant of Dr. Doom at this time. He showed up to them basically like when they were like frozen, like they were almost like dead, right? There was like both him and his dad were both like frozen, right? He like takes them both in, and eventually his dad died, but Victor, he lived. So this right here started his quest for power, right? All this stuff that happened, his mom dying, his dad dying, it basically made him want to, you know, get all this power so he can go and like kick this Baron out of his spot, right? Like take him out of the way, right? So he goes across all these different people, right? Like Valeria, that's Boris's granddaughter, you know, all these different people, and basically like they're trying to, you know, talk him out of it. But it's his quest for power is like it's unquenchable at this point, right? He's going through all these different, like literally everywhere he goes, like the entire time they're on the run, every library he goes to, he just like reads up on stuff, right? Basically like trying to find new stuff that he can actually use to obtain power, right? You know, going to all these different libraries, and eventually he impresses this one professor from a school in America. He gives him like this scholarship to go to that, you know, that university, right? And eventually when he gets there, you know, he's like still learning all this stuff, right? Trying to find out more ways to get power. And eventually he gets like this experiment going, and it like explodes, right? Him and his assistant, they both survive the explosion, but that's where he gets like kicked out of the school, right? And eventually he returns to Boris, right? So with that happening, you know, he has his cloak, you know, his armor and stuff like that. This is after the first part, you know, where with the traveler, you know, he went to the Tibet temple, stuff like that. This is like after that, right? So as soon as he comes back, within like the first week that he comes back, he literally overthrew the king, the Baron of Latveria. He took that thing over like within days, and within a year, all of the people that were living there, they were living good lives, right? They were under the torment of the Baron at first, but Doctor Doom, he showed up, he showed them a better life, and boom, like they're all, you know, grateful for Doctor Doom, right? And like while Boris is telling him this, right, Boris, you know, he says that, you know, he's already talked too much, you know, he knows he isn't supposed to be telling Doctor Strange all this, but you know, he told him anyway, and eventually he leaves, and Doctor Doom, he's just like watching him, right? So Doctor Strange, right? So Doctor Strange, he's actually like teaching Doctor Doom like how to use magic, right? Because like Doctor Doom, he's not the best in magic, right? That's Doctor Strange. Doctor Doom, he knows about magic, you know, he's read up. But when it comes to like who can use the magic better, it's Doctor Strange, right? So you know, he's like teaching them all this stuff so they could basically go to the Netherworld and, you know, fight off this demon and take, you know, Cynthia Von Doom's soul back, right? So that's taking weeks, and eventually it comes to a point where Doctor Doom, he's like upgrading his armor like overnights to basically, you know, hold more energy, right? So he doesn't have to so he can actually keep up with Doctor Strange, right? So on the day that they're supposed to go to the Netherworld, right, he goes to the area where both of the worlds meet, and basically, you know, they go into there and they go to the Netherworld, right? So as soon as they get there, all these little demons and stuff, they're just like, you know, like setting upon them, right? And they're just like fighting all these guys off, right? And they're trying to get rid of these guys as fast as they can, you know, before Mephisto notices, but it's too late. Mephisto's already showing up, right? He already shows up, right? And like when they're basically when Doctor Doom goes to like challenge him, Mephisto sends them away, right? He sends both of them away, and they're basically like trying to shield themselves from his power, and eventually they like land in like a different part of the Netherworld, right? As soon as that happened, right, Mephisto, he sees that he should actually you know, separate the two, right? Because they're really powerful together, like them two together at the same time. They're formidable, okay, but not on the same level as Mephisto, because Mephisto is like stupidly OP, especially in his own realm. But they can, you know, provide a challenge, right? So he ends up like trying to like separate them. So he basically sends like this sandstorm, right, and it sends Doctor Strange flying away, right? So Doctor Doom, he walks a little bit, and eventually he walks up to Mephisto, right? You know, Mephisto, he's sitting in his chair, and Doctor Doom, he's just like talking to him, right? So what they do is they both watch Doctor Strange, right? Because Doctor Strange, he's immortal, and Mephisto, he's trying to like show Doctor Doom that, you know, like since he's just a man, you know, he probably won't be able to last that long in hell, right? So Doctor Strange, he is not no normal guy, right? So the backstory behind Doctor Strange is, you know, he was a surgeon, right? He was a doctor, and basically, like, he was an arrogant doctor, right? Like, whenever people just, you know, needed help, he wouldn't really help them unless there was money involved, right? He was basically like superior Iron Man, right? So that's basically how he was, right? That's the level of dickery that he was on, right? So with all that happening, right, like all of the arrogance, like it ended up like catching up to him, right? So eventually, like when he was in his car, you know, he ended up driving off a cliff by accident, and it like messed up his hands to the point where he actually couldn't do surgery anymore, right? So with all that happening, he hears about this monk, right, the ancient one, who was basically able to like heal people using magic, right? So he ends up like using the rest of his money to go like, you know, find this ancient one and basically try to have his hands fixed, right? With that happening, he actually ends up finding out that the ancient one is actually dead, right? And he realizes that this is all an illusion, and he uses the Eye of Agamotto to like break the illusion, right? So eventually, like when he breaks the illusion, right, he starts fighting off all these other demons, right? And like with that happening, Mephisto, he actually tries to go for another plan, right? He basically tries to offer Doctor Doom the world, right? And Doctor Doom, what he says is, if I wanted this, I would have taken it. I don't need you to offer me this. I could just take it whenever I want. That I'm Doctor Doom, damn it. Like, don't disrespect me like just like that, right? And when that fails, Mephisto, he shows him his mother, right? He basically offers his mother to Doctor Doom, right? So Doctor Doom, he's like trying to take it, you know, he's asking what his price is, right? And that's where we cut, right? We don't know what the price is exactly. So Doctor Strange, he's still fighting off all these demons, right? And we find out he actually he looks down, he sees Doctor Doom's body being carried away by these demons, right? So he goes, he blasts off all these little demons, right? These little fiends and stuff. And like, as soon as he goes to like grab Doctor Doom, his body just falls unconscious, right? Like literally his body falls unconscious, and Doctor Doom is just like standing there over him. So it basically looked like Doctor Doom just like sold out Doctor Strange for his mother's soul, right? So he takes the body to Mephisto, right? And basically Doctor Strange wakes up, and he's like in this crystal prison, right? So with that happening, Doctor Strange, you know, he like asked Doctor Doom, like, what did he offer you, you know, stuff like that. And eventually, you know, like Mephisto's like, okay, you can probably guess what it is at this point. Like you're locked up. Like, what do you think I offered him? Like, come on now. And eventually he's like, okay, yeah, we made a bargain. Release her soul, right? So he ends up like bringing Doctor Doom's mother back, right? So when that happens, you know, she gets like her body back, you know, and eventually he like lets her soul back into her body so she can actually be who she was. Now when this happens, Doctor Doom, he's getting ready to leave, right? He's gonna leave Doctor Strange there. He takes his mom's hand, and, you know, he tries to like walk away, right? And when Cynthia realizes what Doctor Doom did, you know, he sees him as a traitor, right? You know, like he betrayed his friend, the guy that was actually helping him get his mother's soul back, and sold him out to Mephisto, right? So she gets mad, and she's like trying to, you know, she's not basically not gonna leave with him, right? She's basically like disowning him, right? Because of the betrayal that he just caused his friend, right? So with that happens, she ends up like turning back into like stone, right? She turns into stone, and her body's just stuck there, right? Her soul is stuck in that stone, right? So with that happening, Doctor Strange, you know, like he's like listening to Mephisto talk, and eventually, the crystal that he's in just like ends up destroying him, and he like tries to figure out what's going on. He realizes he has like this device from Doctor Doom, basically, because like that crystal, it wasn't responsive to any magic, right? So the only thing that could, you know, actually affect it would probably be scientific, like some kind of device created from scientific means, right? So when that happens, Doctor Strange and both Doctor Doom, they both just start attacking Mephisto, right? They both just like start going at him, right? And this fight is insane, right? Because they're fighting Mephisto where he's his most powerful, right? So Mephisto, he's not no soft here, right? They're both like blasting him like as hard as they can, right? And he lets out all of this crazy power that he has, right? And he like literally just grows to this like massive size, right? And he's just like letting off all these different demons and stuff, and it's ridiculous, like the kind of power that Mephisto has here, right? So he like says, he's like, okay, you have called me a demon, you've called me a monster, but I am the Lord of Demons. I am the ultimate monster. I am the living evil. I am Mephisto. And he just like starts blasting these guys, right? And Doctor Strange, he's like shielding them, right? He's like shielding them. And what Doctor Doom says is like, okay, yeah, he's going back to his normal form, right? He's going back to his bodily form. Let the shield down real quick, Doctor Strange. And when Doctor Strange's like, what? And he's like, just do it. And he like blasts Mephisto, right? So what this is, he basically blasted him with antimatter, right? So when antimatter and normal matter meet, they basically cancel each other out, right? Like they both just cease to exist. So Mephisto here shouldn't even be a thing anymore. Like he should have been erased like completely, right? But we find out that doesn't work here, okay? That's not gonna work on Mephisto. He is a different kind of beast in his own area, right? They literally have no chance here, right? So Doctor Strange, he goes for the desperation attempt, right? What he realizes is, since Cynthia's soul is still stuck in the stone, he can release that, right? And Mephisto would have no way of getting that back, right? Like Doctor Doom and Doctor Strange can leave, Cynthia's soul will be gone. Like Mephisto just lost out on all 3 souls, right? So when that happens, Mephisto, you know, he starts getting pissed off, and he's like, okay, whatever, get up out of here. Like he's done playing games with them, right? They basically turned his game around on him, right? So when that happens, Doctor Doom, he's like pissed off, right? Because like, yeah, he got his mother's soul back, right? But she basically disowned him before, like with her last dying breaths. Like she didn't want to have anything to do with him, right? Because he betrayed his friend, right? And he's like, you know, pissed about that, right? So eventually, you know, he sends Doctor Strange back, and thus ends the tale of triumph and torment. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like, because it is an amazing story. I love this story so much. Ever since I read it, I was like, good God, this is the best piece of writing I've ever seen in my life, right? If you're new to the channel, subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next one.